Hello and welcome to Holistic Nurse Academy. I am Holly Taylor. I'm a registered nurse and a board certified holistic nurse. On this podcast, we talk about bridging the gap between Eastern and Western medicine. However, today's a little different topic, but I think it'll still blend into our narrative, what we're trying to discuss here. And I have a special guest, Larkin Mercer. Hello, how are you this morning?
I am good. How are you, Holly?
I'm well, thanks. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because you are an author and wrote a book that I have a copy of while you were under, um, and basically an OR nurse's tale of advocacy. So today's topic is more about advocacy, which I do think is this conversation. It's the bigger picture, right? And
Yeah.
holistic care is about the bigger picture. And you have a very personal story to tell. I related so much. I want you to know you're definitely not alone. And the way I related is we'll get into, but I just so you know, I don't usually just read books very easily, like sit down and just read. I did that with your book.
Good.
So I'm just gonna hold up a little bit better here for anyone who's watching, listening. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, pretty much anywhere books are sold. Is that right?
Yes, and I will be putting it on Ingram Sparks very
Okay.
soon as well.
Okay. So like I said, usually I'm like an audiobook person just because I'm on the go and stuff, but I had time this weekend and I read this cover to cover, which is
Yay.
like says a lot about the content, but also like I'm proud of myself. So thank you for the opportunity to read it.
Thank
I'm
you for reading it.
Yeah,
That was being able to make it, short enough, condense it. There wasn't a lot of fluff in there, that it gave enough detail, but that somebody could sit down and take the time to read it. Was
yeah,
kind of the goal of not making it too lengthy,
yeah,
because I know that as nurses, we are very busy.
yeah. Right?
But making sure that we didn't feel alone in the process, because it was a lonely path
Oh,
throughout that journey.
I don't doubt that for a second. In fact, that's kind of what I want to talk about a lot is, I didn't write a book, but as I was reading it with, my husband was like nearby a lot of the time. And I'd be like, this reminds me of this experience and this reminds me of this experience. And it's so relatable. And it's like, you live in a totally different part of the country.
Yeah,
We're connecting over this moment and this podcast. And yet our stories have a lot of similar threads, which says it's a systemic problem.
exactly,
Like, this is
exactly.
not, you're not a unicorn. This isn't, you're
Yeah.
not an outlier, which, how they make you feel when you're going through it.
Yep, for sure, and that was kind of the intent of it too, to make sure that people didn't feel alone, and realizing how systemic this is, kind of in that one chapter of that it's contagious. It is throughout the entire system, and how can we heal the system
Right.
was huge. That's kind of my mission.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably follow a little bit of I don't want to give away the whole book because I want people
Yeah.
to read it on their own, but I will probably follow a little bit of the outline because I think it gives us a good way to get to where you're at today. So tell us
Absolutely.
a little bit about your background, kind of your roots, and then what made you choose nursing.
Yeah, nursing wasn't kind of a traditional pathway for me. I grew up rural America and 4-H, FFA, loved animals, thought about becoming a vet, then kind of was like, oh, that's a lot of schooling. And what about a teacher? But then a friend kind of told me, well, kind of the blend of that is nursing. Have you
Mhm.
thought about nursing? And so I looked into it and fell in love with the profession. I had volunteered throughout high school at a local hospital and kind of enjoyed that, but
Yeah.
I'd never thought about that traditionally. I love your holistic side of things, because acupuncture was a part of my life growing up as well. We
Okay.
utilized that. So, if that blend is a beautiful thing as well. And so I really, during nursing school, I was like, why can't we make this part of both
Right?
you know,
Right.
that whole approach, but we're so traditional on here's a pill, here's some meds for that. I'm getting off course.
No, you're not. We're good. You're good.
um, but so I went through nursing school. I do only have my associate's degree, and that's a whole nother avenue of where this facility that I worked for was like, that's all you need here. That's all you need. Don't
Okay.
continue your education, which that was a disservice to myself. But I was able to go through all of the journeys that I did with my associate's degree and learned quite a bit. Um, and then I met a man and moved to the community that I'm in now.
Mhm.
And it's an incredible community. I've never lived in a community like this, and being able to be a nurse and care for them was such a blessing.
Yeah.
Um, is such a blessing because I'm hoping to find other avenues, pathways to be able to get back into caring for them. Uh, yeah, that's so I spent my 20 years, nearly 20 years at the same facility, caring for the same community in several different capacities. I started out Med-Surg, did that for about a year, and then they kind of had a program in place for 6 months of ER orientation. And so then we worked in the ER. And then the next step was OB. So I did OB as well. And I was like, oh, what about chemo, and
Mm.
caring for that vulnerable population. So I did our chemo certification course and did that. Discharge planning. I kind of wanted to be, the jack of all trades, and be able to service our facility and our community to the best that I could, because I
Yeah.
thought I would make myself invaluable to them,
Yeah.
which,
Oh, yeah.
but
I know exactly what you're saying.
yeah. And I found that, like the OR was my last place,
Okay.
because in the book, I explain how the OR was not a setting that I enjoyed so much.
Yeah.
My nursing brain, my caring brain was, how can you cut somebody? How can you put them in positions that aren't natural, essentially, to do what we needed to do? And it felt so wrong, and it would make me physically sick doing it. But then once I realized, oh, we're actually helping them, I was able to get through that.
Okay.
But being able to care for them in that capacity, in their most vulnerable states, uh, people go into surgery so scared. And so being able to be that calming, that they can connect. How can I connect with this patient that's going into surgery? How long have you lived here? Who do you know? And making that personal connection with them. But again, I think like your holistic approach to things, acupressure, aromatherapies, all of that is starting to be integrated into the OR setting of
Love
how can
that.
we calm these patients down. So I'm kind of excited about working, connecting with you on
Yeah.
that.
Love that so much. I'm glad
Yeah,
to hear that.
it is amazing going to some of the conferences and how much they are talking about this holistic approach to, bringing it into the OR, which is a very sterile environment and not necessarily on the holistic side of things.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that warms my heart because I don't hear about it as much in my little bubble, but I know that in other states and in other areas it is taking hold. So
Yeah.
hope to, as part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast is to create awareness, also to create a place where nurses can go and get training and feel like they got it from a professional and someone in their own field. So
Yeah, that's
I think
great.
that's important. Um, so if you were like me, which I think by reading the book, like I told my husband multiple times, she writes like I write. I have written a couple of books, but nothing to do with nursing. But you write in a very like you're having a conversation with me way, which
Yeah.
I appreciate. But if you were like me, you walked into nursing school bright eyed, bushy tailed, and couldn't wait to make a difference.
Yep.
Is that right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, how can we make this better? How can we care for patients?
Yeah.
And I went in with blinders on, I
Yeah.
feel like. And when I was writing the book, it was interesting. Well, actually, after I wrote the book and I talked to, because I had it vetted by legal a couple of different times just to make sure that it was okay, that I didn't cross any lines, that I wasn't putting myself or my family in harm's way in a legal sense. Why I wrote under a pen name
Yeah.
and, changed everything that I could. But keeping the focus on the issues at hand,
The
so that
person.
it kind of took away the, well, who's who in the book, and where did this happen, and the light off of the facility itself, because
Yeah.
it is a systemic issue. But when I talked to legal, I said, I was disappointed that I didn't learn about some of this stuff in nursing school. And she says, well, that would have deterred you from going into nursing, and we need nurses. And so that kind of, okay, how can we blend that though? How can
Yeah, we
we
gotta
educate
figure out a
them?
better balance
We
because
absolutely do.
I agree with you, like, I wish I would have known some things. I went in very naively too. You talk about, I mean, the book is about trying to be an advocate, actually having moments where you felt very competent and good about what you were doing advocacy wise. And then there was a slow, like, undercurrent of things changing, the tone changing, the culture changing, and where you weren't allowed to be the advocate you wanted to be because of procedures and policies.
Mhm.
One of the things that stood out to me was this idea that we think HR is our friend and they're there to
Yes.
protect the employee when what they're really there to do is protect the employer and the company. So, what do you think? Like, tell us a little bit about that part.
Oh man. So I went in again, like you said, thinking that HR was there for the employee. That was that they were the bridge between
Right.
the employee and the employer, your administration, that they were supposed to be your go-to for any issues that you had. And I had experienced that outside of healthcare.
Yeah.
My first job, I worked for Microsoft being tech support for, I'm going to date myself, when we transitioned from dial up to DSL.
Uh huh.
So I got yelled at on the phone. I was a 16-year-old kid and yelled at. I was crying on after this call. Like, this person just broke me down, and HR came right to my desk that, all the calls are being monitored. Yes, that call was monitored, and they were at my desk and walked me around the facility and talked me off that ledge.
Okay.
And that gave me hope. I was like, "Oh, HR is phenomenal. This is great. I'll always use them as a resource." This was not the case in nursing, and it
Not
seems
well.
like it's not just nursing, it's not just healthcare, that HR is this way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that they're the first go-to. They are truly there for administration, for the business, to see where the quote unquote troublemakers are, and how can they legally protect the entity.
Yeah. Yes.
Which
So,
is
if we could tell our younger selves something, right? It would be HR is not your friend, and they're not there to protect you.
exactly, exactly, which is
So,
so sad. It's so
yeah.
sad, but it really is. And to educate people that is, document, document, document. But when you go in, the language that you need to use. And
Yeah.
there are some amazing resources that I've come across now that I wish I had had before. Um, but to create a resource for nurses to be able to go, or healthcare, anybody, even again outside of healthcare, to have those resources available to know what the steps they can take to protect themselves and their job and their livelihood.
Yeah. So there's this process that you describe in the book of, like, how you became a nurse, what you love doing as a nurse, and this desire to advocate. And then this kind of slow chipping away at the soul of what you were trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to read a excerpt that stood out to me. I if anyone can see this, I have like 10 quotes I want to read if we get to it. But this resonated with me in terms of how we're made to feel when we advocate. We are trusted with lives and expected to doubt ourselves. We are told to advocate and reminded of our place. Over time, the tension becomes internal. We learn to pre edit our words before they leave our mouths. We anticipate resistance and adjust our tone accordingly. We decide which hills are worth standing on and which are not. Uh, say more about that.
Initially kind of everything just came out, as a baby nurse, just, you would just
Yeah.
speak before thinking and, but learning that hierarchical aspect of healthcare and knowing when to speak, when not to speak, who to speak to, making you question everything. Each experience in that book, that I had, some of the ones that didn't make it into there of, the dismissal of what you felt was concerning, those vital signs that you would take or those lab values that you would question, and that there wasn't time, that because you lacked the experience, because you lacked the title, you weren't listened to. Um, it made me question everything and, to pick your battles, and that seems to be kind of a theme too of some nurses that I've had a conversation with, pick your battles, but isn't every battle worth
Yeah.
fighting for when somebody's life or
Right.
their livelihood, their health is on the line for it, and that just didn't sit well. That was kind of, that moral injury that I was causing myself, that the system was causing to me,
Yeah.
was really hard, and I didn't recognize it. We didn't talk about moral injury in nursing
No.
school.
No.
It's a thing now,
Yeah.
and knowing, everybody kinda just labels it as burnout, and I again, off course, but,
No,
that
it's
burnout.
trauma.
Yeah, and
It's
the
trauma.
burnout and moral injury are very different,
Yeah.
but that moral injury of having to choose, make those decisions of what to say, when to say it, and second guessing everything. That's what we were taught not to second guess, to trust our guts, to, go with that and that instinctual, and to trust our training, but to have to question it whether or not it was worth it was really hard.
Well, I just think that nurses are in such a weird position because we have this advanced degree in the sense that we spend so much time doing the prerequisites and then getting into nursing school and, you know, technically speaking, we have a higher degree than, I'm just using this as a reference point, but like a licensed massage therapist.
Mhm.
And yet we're pigeonholed into what we can do and what we can't do. It's like we'll teach you to critically think, but don't critically think. And it's this like constant, over the overuse of this word or term, but like gaslighting where like you feel something, something, your critical thinking skills are kicking in and all these things come together and then you're put in your place and it's just so confusing. It's
Mhm.
disorienting.
Very, very disorienting for sure.
I experienced that many times in my own career. And, I'm like you. I have a hard time not speaking up. I have a hard time not making things right if there's a wrong. And then just kept like being pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. And you just get to a point where it's like, I'm in the twilight zone. Like, what is this?
For sure, for
Yeah,
sure, and I don't know how many times I was labeled as difficult to manage,
right.
because I was unwilling to accept this silence culture that they were trying to create, and again, that was something that they didn't teach us about either,
Yeah.
and,
In fact,
uh
I actually, where did I bookmark that one? Well, you're not worried about being labeled as, you know, you're worried about being labeled as difficult.
yeah.
Um, and I've got that bookmark, but go ahead and we can talk about that. It's like sometimes it looks procedural, sometimes it sounds professional, sometimes it arrives disguised as feedback or correction, right? This slow burn to being made quiet.
Mhm.
But its purpose is the same, to discourage disruption. So be quiet, sit in your corner. Advocacy, by its nature, disrupts. It challenges comfort. It asks questions systems aren't always prepared to answer. And when those questions are met with authority instead of curiosity, it becomes clear that the issue was never about insubordination, it was about silence.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that silence culture was big, and experiencing it on all levels, I think I don't know, kinda at a loss for words on that. Yeah, the silence culture that they really that every that the system encourages to cap us and to label. I mean, I had great reviews throughout my entire career. I never had a single a bad one, but it was those meetings that were, you're kind of difficult to manage. Can you, trying to tailor me to fit the mold. It's a bit patient safety is of the utmost importance. And, pulling back, I think in the book I said, like that Wizard of Oz, Dorothy pull, the curtain being
Yeah,
pulled
curtain.
back.
Yeah.
I was, oh my gosh. And I remember that moment. I will never forget it. And, it just kept being pulled back.
Yeah.
And realizing that it is about the dollars
Yeah.
and that but patient safety, but staff safety as well, but the labeling that they put on us to
Right.
make us feel like we're the issue when we're not.
Right.
Um, and having that backbone, but having a support system, and there is a lack of support. And because it is very lonely, they make you feel alone. They isolate you, and
Yeah.
I
Well, in my experience, the one that I relate kind of you were in a very different let's see, different nursing field than I was, but the system was very similar. And it was like, well, if they didn't like what you were doing, they would just put you in a different department. We used to joke like on Fridays, did you check to see if your job was posted? Because a lot of times they would post your job before they would tell you that you were
Yep.
fired. Like stuff like that. That was just bizarre, just bananas. Um, but you also talk about there were good days. There was the glory days. You were
Mm.
talking about pre-charting days or pre-electronic charting days.
Oh man, weren't they the greatest?
The good old days, right? Where I mean, yeah, we weren't up against so much. So I've been in nursing 15, maybe a little bit more years. How many years have you been in nursing?
20. Yep.
20. Okay, so a little bit longer than me. So you might remember those glory days a little bit longer than me. But kind of what was that like? What was the
Oh,
good old days?
it was amazing with, in the book, I mentioned the one doctor that I
Yeah.
worked with. He was phenomenal. His assessment skills were just incredible. But the camaraderie and the being able to take the time that not everything was measured. It was by an appointment or by, when they would come into the ER, it wasn't. There are times when time is of the essence, for strokes, for heart attacks, getting, the door to CT, all of that stuff is important. So being able to measure that is a great tool, but to also pause and take the time with those patients to truly listen to them, that you weren't up against, did I check all of these boxes? Did I do all of these tests? He was able to come in to a room with a kiddo and diagnose just by laying his hands on the patient, doing his assessments, his stethoscope, and go, it's appendicitis. And
Yeah.
our general surgeon would never question it. But then as electronic charting got brought in and insurance companies could look at everything. They'd say, pause, you can't go to surgery. We need a CT. Well, our CT's down for right now it's down for repairs. So we would have to ship a patient out just to go get a CT to be able to take out their appendix.
Yeah.
And we're very remote. So those things were extremely frustrating.
Right.
Uh, but I think because we relied on each other so much that camaraderie and the team-based care was there.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like the electronic charting, we talk about siloing in departments. I think that electronic charting it really did start the silo process. I feel like that's where the disconnect happened. And because you weren't handing a physical chart to somebody, that they were just looking at a computer, and you go into a doctor's appointment, they're looking at a computer. They're trying to change that a little bit with, transcription and stuff, somebody listening in and transcribing. So it feels a little more human.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's a guy named Dr. Z, uh,
mhm,
and he said, like, basically, the computer system has become like a cash register. It's just like a
yeah.
cash register for healthcare.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah,
It really
because it's,
is.
like, all about
And
what you put in
administration can sit
generates.
behind their desk
Yeah,
and not come down and see what's going on and going,
right,
"Well, why did it take 10 minutes with that? That should have taken 5 per
right,
the national standard."
right, and, I mean, yeah, don't get me started on what's on paper doesn't translate into real life, you know?
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna read another, excerpt from your book on this kind of the way it used to be is the chapter. "I didn't recognize the loss right away. You don't when you're inside it. You adjust. You compensate. You assume the problem is temporary or personal. You tell yourself that you will remain consistent. The system will eventually recalibrate. It took time to understand that what was disappearing wasn't just a way of working, it was also a way of relating. We were losing a culture where respect came naturally rather than enforced or forced,
Yeah.
where authority didn't require diminishing others to maintain itself, where speaking up didn't feel like an act of defiance."
Yeah. That was we definitely did lose that, ability because you built that foundation of trust because we were working alongside each other and not at our computer desks, and, that team approach, again, we lost that for
Yeah.
sure. Um, and building that trust, it did take time, as a baby nurse, in those early years of, trusting, you know, my instincts and my assessment skills, honing those, but we worked alongside each other with that. And
Yeah.
for the most part, there were some of the, we eat our young and we eat our old.
Yeah.
It's, that's kind of a trend now as well.
Yeah. We don't do that here at the academy.
That's great. I love that.
We create a safe space for nurses to flourish and grow
Yeah.
because that culture needs to die. That's an old way of
Oh,
doing it.
yeah.
It's hard enough. Like we all have things to offer and strengths, and I think that's part of like the hard part for someone like you and I in the system is we're just not mean girls like that, and so
Right.
when they show up, it makes it very hard again to not speak out, not say something, and not look like you know the freak flag is waving. But I've just learned to embrace it. I have a freak flag, and it's
Yep.
okay to fly it.
Same here, same here.
But it took me a long time to get there. It took me a long time to adjust to the fact that, I just really accept myself. It was a self-acceptance process, so
Yeah. And I recognized the problems within our small system and thought, well, if I could help, through the avenues of some people are pro union, some people are anti union, but could I make the workplace better by my involvement with that?
yeah,
And not realizing what a target that put on myself for that. And I did leave this out of the book. So this
yeah.
is a little inside, but
But
I was told by our union rep at the time that by my involvement, they would probably try to pull me into a leadership role, and that would be their exit strategy for me. And
oh,
that was a long time before. And I thought, oh, I was in denial. I still had my rose tinted glasses on. But then
right.
once
A common
that,
story.
yeah. But I wanted to be the unicorn, as you would, and go against that and say, no, I trust this system
Yeah.
that I think that it'll come into my favor, that I can make a difference. And that leadership role, I saw a glimpse of those good old days come back a little bit because the surgery department was isolated for the most part and we were able to work as a team. And um
You were having success at this
oh,
point,
we
right?
were. We
How about
were.
that?
It was incredible. I mean, it was a struggle. It was
Yeah.
a struggle. As I put in the book, it was during COVID that I was put in charge of the surgery department. It had just completely fallen apart. There were only 2 of us, myself and one other nurse,
Wow.
and ran it. I mean, we're a small critical access hospital, so we only had 2 ORs and 1 endo suite. So our volumes were down like everybody else's. We were asked to work elsewhere for a time being. I think I went out to a community outreach, mental health
Mhm.
clinic and went and passed some meds for them at the time. But it also, that pause in our procedures gave me that opportunity to really assess what kind of leader I wanted to be and what kind of team I wanted to build. I was able to say, okay, we're not ramped up with our services right now. I can hire the right people, the right personalities. And the team was incredible. It was honestly one of the best teams that I had worked with.
Mhm.
And the surgeons said the same. It was, we played everybody to their strengths. Nobody was against each other. It was just an incredible environment. Our patients felt it. They came in. uh, This was a patient for a colonoscopy left the endo suite with us and going, I have never had so much fun. Thank
Aw.
you. Like, after a colonoscopy, like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
So, if you can make somebody's day fun with that
With the
procedure
stuff.
and,
Yeah.
it wasn't a scary yes, it was scary because it was the operating room, it was, the endo room, but we could put their minds at ease, and knowing that the work we were doing, it was really important, but it was appreciated, it was supported. We then had a change in administration, and you could feel that shift again, just like with the electronic charting. You could just feel the shift, and the dollars and cents were brought up at every single meeting that we have to do more with less. Do you really need all the staff? And, well, I'm not cutting positions. You want us to add in surgeons, but you want me to cut my staff? I can't do that. And we need, more equipment to be able to do things. But everything was, what's the return on investment?
Yeah.
And, learning to get creative. I did obtain my CNOR, and through that, I was able to have access to different leadership options. And Aorn had a great resource for leadership, like a toolkit on budgeting and being able to budget and show the return on investment on your staff as well, not just a piece of equipment, but your staff. And so I was able to justify and continue to secure their jobs as well. Um, but that team was an incredible team, but then it met its demise,
Yeah. And
unfortunately.
it met its demise because of the bottom dollar?
Yep, the bottom dollar, that great phrase, "You're just a nurse."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
we
so
were
let's talk about that. You're
oh,
nurse.
we've all heard it.
All heard it.
And that was honestly the first time in my career at that facility that I had ever heard that phrase. It was a slap in the face, and I couldn't believe that I had been told that, and but it was followed up with, "You're just a nurse, I'm the surgeon, I'm the moneymaker."
Yeah.
And that hurt to my core, like, it's
Sure.
still to be told that, and that was truly when I was done. I knew I had to advocate for myself, but I was unwilling to accept that narrative.
Well,
That
this is what's backwards, is there's a culture that supports. So, really, honestly, like, when I look back at my experience, because 'cause I'm completely out of it now, and the more time I've had away from it and the more years I've had away from I'm like, that was the equivalent of a, abusive relationship.
yeah,
And so that example of you having to work with this physician who didn't call you, who said you're just a nurse, but also you had several other, interactions. It's a symptom of something bigger, right?
yeah,
It wasn't just a one-time isolated moment. You're just a nurse, even if it was, it doesn't matter. But like these situations when you can see the bad behavior, the poor behavior, it's going to escalate.
mhm,
And instead of dealing with the person who's going to escalate things, they make everybody else feel like they're in the wrong.
yeah,
It makes no sense, but this is the culture change that has to happen. This has to shift. I know in some areas there is kind of more of a reprimand for doctors who act out of line or, and not even just doctors, but like any, you know, coworker who's being outright verbally, emotionally abusive gets
right.
disciplined. But in a situation like yours, is it because you were so small that they couldn't find a doctor to work that spot? Or what do you think the culture was what do you think was really going on underneath it all?
I do think that it was a money grab. We had just started, a total so 2020 came, that surgeon was hired on, and we started total joints. I had been told at the very beginning of working in the OR that we'll never do total joints here. We're too small, we don't have the blood
Yeah.
supply, we don't have all of that, but it really got shoved down our throats. We are doing total joints. So get on board. Okay, so I got on board and it was truly money driven.
Yeah.
And that was where the decision, and now looking back, yes, the behavior was bad, but the system allowed that behavior.
Right, exactly.
And so being able to look at that surgeon and going, he was allowed to behave that way. I don't think had they slapped his hand in the very beginning and been like, we don't treat our staff like that. I don't
Right.
care if it's what level, if it's a CEO that you talk to like that or a housekeeper or a nurse, it doesn't matter. We don't treat people like that.
100%. That needs to be the new normal going forward.
It
We
really
set we
does.
set boundaries right up front.
Yep. And
Um,
had it
okay.
been addressed, we wouldn't have gotten to where we were, I don't think. But
Right.
honestly, looking back, life has a beautiful way of working out.
It does.
And I feel truly blessed that it worked the way it did
Yeah.
because I can heal. My family is so much better now because of it. I'm so much healthier and getting to talk to you and looking that
Yeah.
there's other
I know,
avenues.
right? You can make something out of it
Absolutely.
for sure, but I would like to rather live in a system or work with a system that, I've stepped away from bedside because I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not being made to feel small because I have big ideas and I want to make a difference and advocate.
Yeah.
And so they are going to lose more and more people who,
Hmm.
we're in a culture right now that is understanding boundaries better, is understanding abusive relationships, whether it's at home or whether it's at work. And
Yeah.
we're not putting up with it like we used to.
Absolutely.
And you can tell how abusive it is when you decide to unionize and they fire you,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
Yep.
So that's just, more of that power dynamic. Well, we'll show you who's in charge.
Yes. Big brother knows best, daddy knows best kind of mentality
Right.
was what they ruled by.
Right.
And
So I
yeah.
say mad props to you for making something good out of it all. You took the higher road many times in this book. I'm not trying to place blame. I'm trying to show the system's um, failings or flaws or what's wrong in the system. Um, but there is some blame here to be had. And you took the higher road, and I honor that and I respect that.
Thank you.
But I can say that for you. I'll say that for you. I
Thank
can
you.
tell I know your heart from reading this. I know that your heart was always in the right place. You wanted to do the right thing, uh, by the standards you were educated on and the kind of person that you are. You have integrity. And the fact that we're constantly told you can't have those standards in a system, like, you go on to tell several stories, and I don't know which one you wanna share, about how literal, like, safety
Ugh.
was compromised, outcomes were compromised. I think the one where somebody pulled what was it, like
Yeah.
a worm-sized piece of tissue out?
Oh, that was the suture. Yeah, so that was the 99 liters chapter.
Okay,
Yes.
what do you wanna tell that story a little bit?
Yeah. So
Okay,
the patient had come in for rotator cuff surgery and we were in the middle of it and we were going through so much fluid. The pressure system, has its parameters of how much fluid gets ran through. And we hang 3-liter bags at a time and we hang 4 of them usually, and that should get you through one shoulder case. You should be
okay,
set. When we depleted not only our OR room stock supply of it, like our supply closet, and had to go to our other supply, the main hospital supply, and we ran out of those 3-liter bags. Like something is wrong. What is going on in here?
right,
And those cases were kind of an all hands on deck. They typically, rotator cuff, a complex one could take a surgeon 4 hours at most on that. It was not abnormal to be in the OR for 7 hours on a simple rotator cuff with this surgeon. And,
So it
we were
should take 4,
it should take
and
like
you
4
were
at the very most. And
almost
so,
okay, you were
yeah,
often in there for 7.
often in there for 7. And I was getting reprimanded for when I would be scheduling these, and he would say, "Oh, 4 hours." I'm like, "Your track record says 7. I don't think we should be doing 2 of these in a day."
Yeah.
And really, and I got a lot of pushback from that, and I left that out of the book. But so that case, we're going through all of our 3-liter supplies, and, staff's like, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Well, we're going to have to go to 1-liter bags, but we have to make sure, because LR is what we run in our OR for our IV fluids for our patients too." I said, "We have to make sure that we keep enough on hand of those for our patients that are upcoming this week. I don't want us to have to cancel surgeries." But knowing that, I mean, there's fluid all over the floor, there's, it's everywhere. It's kind of a disaster in that OR, and surgeons getting frustrated. Time is, going through things, and, you know, he just keeps, the clock's ticking, and he feels the pressure. And he, so 99 liters went in on that case, and hence the title of that one. And
And it's supposed to be
I,
4?
it
3 to
should
4?
be 12 at the most.
Okay.
12 is kind of a high number. And because if you think about all that fluid that you're putting into that shoulder space,
Yeah.
it it balloons up. But
Where's it
then
gonna go?
it doesn't, right, and it doesn't stop just in that localized shoulder area. It starts to creep up the neck of the patient as well. So
Right.
everything is swollen, and um surgeon is getting frustrated partway through, and there's a shaver device that you shave off, the surfaces of the cartilage to make everything smooth, to make it beautiful in there. And he's getting frustrated and is asking one of the circulating nurses, because we had 2 in the room at the time, and he was asking her to up the RPMs on the machine that controls the speed of that shaver. And so she's upping it, from the standard settings. Every time it plugs in and it has its standard settings, it's kind of dummy proof. But he's asking you to increase it. So she's increasing it. And about the 3rd time in, she starts telling him the numbers of the RPMs as he's increasing it, asking her to increase. She's following his instructions, increasing it, but making sure that everybody in the room is aware of what RPMs we're at. And by that, it creates bubbles in the shoulder space. And pretty soon the scene is obliterated. You can't see, but he's still shaving away. And all of a sudden, he just
Hard to
stops.
listen to.
It was like, what is going on in this room right now? Okay,
Yeah.
he's frustrated, and he pulls out the shaver device, pulls out the camera, and hands the shaver device over to one of the nurses who's assisting him. There's 2 assistants. One is a PA, one's a nurse. And um, hands it to the person, and they are cleaning it as they're supposed to. And as they're cleaning it and taking it apart, they pull out a suture piece. And that suture piece was part of the rotator cuff repair that
Oh.
had just been done. And they presented it to the surgeon, and he says, and puts the camera back in, quick look around, looks good, we're done, close up, and we're out. Yeah, look on your face. So 99 liters and that suture material. The nurse that found the suture material in the shaving device and the nurse that was responsible for documenting the 99 liters came to me after the procedure and said, "We were really uncomfortable with this." And I said, "Okay, what do you guys want to do?" And I said, "Do you want to write it up?" And they said, We're nervous to write it up because what's going to happen, hence the silence culture. But we're afraid of reprimands from this." Okay. And, but I guided them through. I talked them through. I was like, what are we? We're patient advocates. If you don't say something and something comes up from this with that patient, which it did down the road, because that patient is again in the book,
Yeah.
that they had complications from that, but they were told it was their medical problems
Right.
that resulted in that they had a medical condition that caused that shoulder not to heal, which was inaccurate. There was documentation of lab values that patient was fine, and that they should have healed, but it was because of that suture material not being where it needed to be.
So was that
Uh,
documented that that piece had come out, or was that
it was documented in the incident reports. There was no place in the nursing notes because
yeah.
the Epic does not let us document like freehand too much in the OR records itself.
And
Um,
incident reports are all internal, right?
they are all handled internally. One thing that kind of came of this is what if we had, like, I'm trying to think of big picture for
Yeah.
incident reports, and if things like that were handled externally, um, would that help nurses or staff feel empowered
Yeah.
to go to an external entity, document what happened, and it gets punted through the right channels?
Right.
And okay, this is flagged. This is an incident for sure. This should never have happened. This was a never event in my book. Like
Yeah.
that should never have happened.
Yeah.
Um, but that incident report, it took a lot. It probably took over a year for that one to finally get kicked to an outside surgeon to review it, because we handled it internally, but you had a general surgeon reviewing that case, not an orthopedic surgeon. So not knowing the ins and outs and what should happen in that case and what shouldn't happen in that case, understanding that 99 liters, anybody hearing 99 liters went into one patient should know that that's not okay.
Yeah.
But and that did get documented. The 99 liters was in there because that had to get traced and billed through pharmacy.
Right.
Um, but when we did punt it to another surgeon to review it, they left out the piece of the surgeon that the suture got left out, like it got pulled out. They didn't include everything into it. And because one of our nurse anesthetists was like, I want to know what was sent to the surgeon. No, but you guys left out all of this information.
Yeah.
So it wasn't accurately reviewed. And it took quite a while, but still nothing came of it.
So where you're standing today, what can be done? Is it still very hard to be an advocate in that situation? I mean, like, is there any legal
Hindsight,
outside outside the corporation place you can go?
um, hindsight on that one, I should have went straight to the state medical board.
Okay.
And I did mention that in the chapters following. I think it was one board at a time. I think I went to an AORN conference and I talked with other nurse leaders about what had happened. And I shared the 99 liters. I shared the suture material, and that table that I was at went silent and jaws dropped
Yeah.
like yours. It was,
Yeah.
how could that happen? And that was when they said, well, you need to go to the board. I said, well, I took it to our local, med staff board, essentially. And, I filed the incident report, but it went nowhere. And
Mhm.
that's where they said, you have to go to the state medical board.
Yeah.
And I called my husband that night and I said, I shared an incident that happened. I shared with him what happened, at the meeting with those nurses and what they told me the next steps should be. And he was fearful for me to lose my job.
Sure.
And, what does that entail? And to try not to be the rebel rouser that I am, and, to just let the powers that be handle it. But that patient had to sell their business. I put that in the book as well. They had to sell their business and they lost their livelihood because of that incident.
Because
And
it's
that,
so because the surgery failed.
yep, yep. Well, the surgery didn't fail. The surgeon in my
Thank you. Thank you for correcting me.
sorry, but that was not a systemic. That was not a systemic issue. That one was really hard to swallow because that was a surgeon not doing what they were supposed to do in there.
Yeah, they sound incompetent, like, they sound like they
Yeah,
shouldn't have been in that position to begin with.
right. And yeah, I think that then you add in some nepotism into there as well. That was
There's always the nepotism.
there always is. And yeah, that was really struggled with and still struggle with it, that a system that is built on caring could do this.
Yeah.
And that was also kind of why writing the book, to we're advocates, but we should also be teaching people how to advocate for themselves and that
Right.
it's okay to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And, that patient to have empowered him to be like, you could ask the doctor, really, no, I want to see my lab values,
Yeah.
and
Yes, we
yeah.
definitely can do a better job at empowering people, knowing that they have a right to their chart, to,
Yes.
um, yeah, know what's going on, to ask questions, and trust your gut. Like,
Yes.
if your gut says, "This is not the right surgeon for me," I mean, take the time to reschedule, to cancel it. Like, you are way better off listening to your gut. So many people are right when their gut says, "This feels off."
Yeah.
Um, in your situation, I don't know what people's options are because you're in a smaller town, situation, but, if I have a big thing, I'm getting 2 or 3 opinions.
Exactly.
I'm not settling on the first person, and especially if they treat me poorly or they talk down to me, you know, the way we interact matters.
Oh, this surgeon's bedside manner with the majority of his patients was great. They loved him
Oh,
because he took
really?
oh, yeah, he took his time getting to know them.
That's so interesting,
Very interesting indeed.
'cause it's usually not that way. There's usually a very clear
Oh, he that surgeon was very Jekyll and Hyde.
Okay,
Very Jekyll and Hyde.
okay. Well, and I always say ask your OR nurses who they would suggest.
Exactly.
You know the behind the scenes.
Yeah, and we, as nurses, we have to be careful with that too, of if somebody asks you and
Yeah,
yeah.
could get
Well,
you
if
in trouble.
exactly. If it were me, I would.
Yeah, I know.
Ugh.
It's just silly. So, okay, so then you had several incidences where things came up, you tried to address them, like, okay, let's just use relationships as a pattern for this. So, in a relationship, which, employees, especially in the medical field, like to say, "We're family." So we're family and we're in a relationship, so I should be able to bring a concern or problem to you without retaliation, or there should be some dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And, if there has to be some self-reflecting, great. If there has to be, some compromise, fine. But again, every time you were doing this, it was like in a private chart, you were being marked down for being disruptive,
Yes.
an outlier. So you tell us several stories that happen. We just heard one, but you do go into detail a few more stories that um, I could, in a different way, validate that I've experienced similar things. Um, and then what happens over time?
Over time, things kind of the meetings that I had it was very dismissive of, we're handling that. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing, status quo, keep working, keep plugging away. We're working on it. Um, and that one incident that they hired after the Just a Nurse, they did hire an investigator because they're an external investigator that came from the other side of the state, no ties to our community whatsoever, and they did perform an investigation because it was deemed that there was complaints within the department that there was a hostile working environment.
Mhm.
And, so that investigation took a couple of months, and
So
the culture.
let me back up just a minute. The
Yeah.
investigation was about having a hostile work environment?
Yep. So the staff was super excited to know that that things were being investigated,
Yeah.
that, they were hopeful that there was gonna be an end in sight to this, and my gut instinct that I trust all the time told me that nurses don't win, and I shared that with my husband that I felt like I needed to prepare to be done with this job, that I was gonna be pushed out, and initially, the investigation, it was just information gathering, tell our sides. I documented everything like they taught us in nursing school is to CYA, and I did that. I had text messages, I had emails, I had voicemails, all of it documented. And I went into that meeting prepared with the investigator, spent a lot of time with her. But then as the months went on and, the repeated conversations with her, I felt for sure that I was going to be done, the targets were on me of how can we get rid of
Because you were
Kayla.
speaking up
Yeah,
and you were being the advocate.
correct. And the staff also that were called back in for more meetings with the investigator were like, yep, things have definitely shifted. You are definitely the target of the investigation, that it doesn't matter what we're saying. She's not listening.
Mhm.
And so at the end of that, they said, okay, investigation is done. I was pulled into a meeting with HR and another executive. They said, we concluded and we have a 50-page document of all of her findings, and there's no grounds to do anything to the surgeon in question that you raised your concerns about. We'll let med staff handle it if they feel there's anything medically on that side of things. But from our standpoint, there's nothing to be done. But there were some other concerns raised, and those will be dealt with accordingly. After that meeting, I started to pack my office.
Yeah,
I knew I was done.
what was coming.
Yep. And I was put on administrative leave for a couple of weeks. And then I got a phone call. And every time they called me or gave me that leave, it was like at Friday at 5,
Oh,
Friday at
Friday
5.
I was gonna say that. Friday, 5 o'clock.
Oh, it was like, really? And the more research I do, that's their
That's their
tactic.
tactic, yeah.
That, oh, and I, I was devastated. I didn't know where to go with that, but we negotiated a separation agreement. But in that, it took me forever to find an attorney too. I'd never had to talk to an attorney before, and it took forever to find somebody that was willing to take my case and, at least to review my separation agreement. And the big thing was I wanted to write a book. I said,
Yeah.
I know that it'll be healing for me, but it will also help other people, because I know I'm not alone in this. I
No.
know I'm not, that this isn't, and this is a bigger issue than just here.
Yeah.
So making sure that I had some options open, I did accept the separation agreement. I could have drug my family through, I think I put it in the book, that I could have drugged them through 2 or 3 years of legal battles and gotten my job back, is what the attorney said. You could get your job back, but would you want to go work for them again? I said, I couldn't. And
Yeah.
that I know that there's other avenues out there, but knowing now, I should have done other things to protect myself. Um, and that's what I'm hoping that,
In
maybe is
hindsight,
hindsight's 2020 always.
so let's talk about that, because I
Um,
I agree that there's times where I look back on, like, things that I was pushed on and I was bullied about or made to feel like I was the problem because I didn't wanna run an assisted living facility with 65 residents and a Coumadin management program for a
oh,
whole 'nother building, and I was bullied into making me feel like I was the problem when I
yeah,
was like, "Well, somebody bleeds out and I'm not paying attention because they're on a anticoagulant. Guess who gets in trouble for that?"
exactly.
But they make you feel like you are just so incapable, and when I look back and I think about how I pushed that and I was very so there came a moment where somebody said to me, because I was saying, I need to be let go of this responsibility in order to carry on with my current responsibilities because I had been doing it in a previous role. Well, it in the transition, no one was willing to take accountability for it. So I'm still running this program. I'm telling you this because of the legal implications had something gone wrong.
Yeah.
And I carried it with me into another program where I'm working the jobs of 5 nurses, plus I've got this program on my shoulders. I had to fight for over a year to please relieve me of this program where it's like vital that somebody is making sure these clients are being taken care of. Their commitment management program is being, like they're being monitored. And someone said to me, like someone in the higher up said, Holly, why can't you just do what you're asked to do? just really condescending, really sharp, and and the little girl inside of me who hates disappointing people, who hates to feel like a problem, who's just standing up for what she needs, she just felt this big,
Yep.
and they are so good at that. So I think, thank goodness I did that because hindsight, again, I didn't feel like I had any support or legal, repercussions for that. Like I didn't have any, like we should all probably have a freaking attorney
Uh-huh.
from day one. Like, what
Yeah.
do you think? I know I might be being a little hyperbolic here, but like, what do you really believe?
I
Hindsight.
believe, yeah, hindsight, I wish that I had known all of the different entities to be able to report
Yeah.
to get that ball rolling well ahead of time, even if, like there's EOCCO, equal employment, and I think it's EO. No, EEOC, equal employment. Yeah, EEOC. They're good to report to. Bully is super important. Like knowing your entities within your state, but also at the national level, and your state medical board. Um,
Are they helpful?
their systems are overwhelmed as well. So that's where kind of brainstorming a little bit. I think the state medical board was probably the most responsive
Okay.
in everything. Um,
Because I think of
I,
like programs that are out there to help, and then, as nurses, we've called those programs and they do very little
yeah,
to intervene. So I'm just curious, what are
that's,
actually helpful?
yeah. I feel like had I got the ball rolling that because I had already been let go, that it was kind of, "Oh, well, that's already over and done with," not
Yeah.
it's in the middle of things. Um, knowing your legal resources as well within
Yeah.
your state who, can you just get online and look up, an attorney that might take it, but it did take me probably I think I worked on that for a couple of weeks while I was on paid leave
Yeah.
to try to find somebody, and it did take a long time. But again, back to kind of what in a perfect world to have an external agency that you do report to and
Yeah.
to file those incident reports that you could have, whether that be a volunteer community service kind of thing. I mean, I get it that we all live and lead busy lives, but could you have surgeons on standby that kind of review those like, hey, I'm an ortho surgeon. Yeah, I can go ahead and take that and I'll review that chart in the name of patient safety,
Well,
staff
we know the
safety.
answer is yes when these higher CEOs and CFOs are making millions of dollars and they say budget, budget, budget,
Yeah, do more with less. Do
like
more with less.
I roll. Um, so I think we are in a time where it's time to like put the fears aside and start taking our power back.
Absolutely.
And
And
I think
y
one of the things that needs to end, I've seen this in maybe a state or 2, where they are actually making administrators of hospitals have licenses that they can lose,
hmm,
like nurses do.
yeah,
Or, nurse-run operations, I think, are way better because, they get what nurses are going through.
yeah. In the book too, there were 2 CEOs mentioned. I don't know if you caught on that one of them had been, retired, but the
Mhm.
one that I worked under for the majority of my career was a nurse, in
And that was
fact.
your advocate, the one that you said
No.
advocate, okay.
Nope, that was a different one that yeah,
Okay.
losing my one advocate. That chapter still gets me every time. I cry
Being
during
one
that one.
advocate. Yeah,
Yeah, that's that was a tough
because
time.
you felt supported at least a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's true. I will say, I mean, just because you're a nurse and you're at the top, I mean, you're subject to the bullying too, at the top. I mean, nurses have the most ridiculous management positions that I can think of, where we're just like, you're a manager, but you're really just like a middleman that has no power.
yeah, but I do love the idea of the higher ups having to hold.
Yeah.
There is also it's going nationwide end workplace abuse
Yeah.
movement right now, and that one has been pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah.
How can we give the
Yeah.
employees a little bit more control,
So
power?
unions are coming more of a thing with nurses.
Yep.
Um, I think state to state, if not of like federally, if you're an administrator, you have a license to lose just like a nurse does. Like it's not just one person's fault when there's a failure, unless
Exactly.
it's outright, you know, uh, someone just being criminal.
Yeah.
Um, and then I don't know. What do you think about legal counsel from the get go? Seems a
I
little
would,
intense, but
hindsight, I wish I had if I felt like that there was a concern, and yes, there were concerns, definitely.
yeah,
Um, and talking to the couple of attorneys that I did that had read the book, like, "Man, you had so many opportunities, and
yeah,
that to go after, but you didn't." So, well, no, because I thought that this is where I wanted to be forever. So
right,
those rose tinted glasses were on, and to have taken those off and knowing, my resources and utilizing the resources. I wish I had done that. I
yeah,
probably would have, but again, would have still been there, and I wouldn't be having this conversation with you and
right,
hopefully making a change.
right. Document things, keep your own record.
Yes.
Um, but like if you feel that your safety as a nurse is at risk, like, that your license is at risk because you're not getting the backing you need, find
Yeah.
resources outside of the group you're with.
Yeah.
Um, so a few more things before we wrap up. So you got on paid leave. And this is what you said in that chapter. Retaliation rarely announces itself as punishment. More often, it presents itself as fatigue, a process, as a need to reset. Paid leave becomes a way to stop the conversation without having to win it. That was a good one. To remove the voice without disputing the substance of what was said. The system does not argue with you, it steps away from you.
For sure, for sure. That those conversations and the support that I had within my own department, they slapped me with the label of that I was the problem. That was one attorney she asked too. She goes, "Well, what did they ended up, firing you for? What were their grounds?" I said, "Well, that I created a hostile work environment, that it was me that did it." And she goes, "Well, you did."
Oh,
She goes, "You were making it hostile for their business model."
yeah.
I said, "Oh." I was like, "I never thought of it like that." She goes, "Yeah, no, you definitely were hostile to their business."
Yeah.
She goes, "Not the patients, not your staff. You were advocating, you were supporting them, but the removal and that paid leave definitely, in their mind, created that separation, that camaraderie that we had developed, even not just in our department, but throughout the facility, and that support." Um, it left a lot of people wondering what happened to me, but it's a small community,
Sure.
and
Well,
definitely this.
and let's talk about I mean, you haven't said the word trauma, but I feel like there's trauma throughout this woven,
Yeah.
right? You and I said this in a previous conversation with another nurse that like it's really easy to over identify with your self as a nurse, that once like for some of us who embrace it as such an important role that we're playing and that we just feel like, oh, I'm doing something good for the world, it's really easy to think that I am a nurse and that's all I am. And what this does is kind of shatter that ego self.
Oh,
Um, but it's traumatic.
it
Do you
is.
feel traumatized?
Oh, big time. Big time.
So I just want to acknowledge, not that we have to dive into the trauma of it all, but that it is traumatic. And
Yeah.
that I'm sure um there's been lots of these moments where you feel like the rug was literally pulled out from underneath you, right? Is that
Yeah,
so true? Yeah.
for sure. And just the thought of going back into the brick and mortar system
Yeah.
is terrifying.
Yeah.
I neighboring hospitals, I've been told, "Oh, there's a position for you. Come over." I I can't.
Yeah.
I Oh, even just the thought now just makes me just oof.
Yeah.
I was near the end of it. I'm very active. I'm in shape. was in shape. Not so much the writing the book and all of that, but,
Yeah.
uh, so low blood pressure, low heart rate. I was very good physical condition, but my blood pressure was creeping up. I was starting to have panic attacks. I'm like, is something wrong with my lungs? Do we need? And she's like, no, you're just having panic attacks. Do you want to get on meds? No, I don't want to get on meds. I want to solve the problem. And it took probably a year
Yeah,
because that was in 24 that happened. And it took probably a year for me to feel like I could truly breathe again.
sure.
Um, so yes, knowing that it,
Even even if I mean, I listened to your story and I know exactly where you're coming from, but it will trigger shame. It will trigger,
oh,
like, so many feelings that, like, you just wanted to be a good nurse and do good, and you were, slapped upside the head and said, "Your 20 years doesn't
it,
matter."
it didn't mean anything. Yeah, that it was that loyalty to them didn't mean a thing.
Yeah,
And, I touched on that chapter when I was building the team that nurse and myself, we took call 24/7 for our surgery department for 1 month straight
right.
before we finally got some help in there. And yes, our volumes were down, but that didn't mean the emergencies stopped.
Mm.
And that willingness, I mean, her and I bonded over that. We still talk. I mean, and
Yeah, you
just that willingness.
just threw your phone out into the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, I just that on-call, that leash that we had,
Yeah,
um, but that loyalty was not rewarded at all, and that is something I think to go into, and anybody that I talk to that's thinking about getting into nursing, it's set your boundaries and hold true to them. Set
yeah.
your boundaries and do what's healthy, and how you mentioned too that we identify as nurses, that's our biggest thing, that when people, are like, "Oh, hi, what do you do?" Or, "Tell me about yourself." "Oh, I'm a nurse." That's
Mhm,
we lead with that.
mhm.
And changing that conversation, when people are like, "Oh, I'm a nurse." "Oh, well, what do you like to do for yourself?"
Mhm.
"What do you do to fill your cup?"
Yeah,
And people get quiet. And then if you're a mother on top of that and a wife, then we lose ourselves and taking care of ourselves. And that's where your like holistic
mhm.
approach is incredible.
Yeah,
Not just for our patients, but for ourselves and making sure that we do take care of ourselves. Cause I didn't for the longest time.
for sure. And it's that you're useful till you're not
Oh,
part of, like, an abusive relationship. Take, 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 and, you feel like, I'm being the good steward, and this will create loyalty, and it's take, take, take until you're no longer useful.
yeah.
And once that opportunity comes, then see you later, um, with no blinking of an eye
Yeah.
on a Friday at 5 o'clock.
Exactly.
Um, so, like you said, in a way, it's been a good, like, aha moment, but it's come at a cost,
Yeah.
right? A deep cost.
Yeah.
Mental health, well-being. So, essentially, you were on paid leave, then the, relationship ended.
Yep.
The toxic relationship ended, and then where are you at? How long ago was that?
That was September 13th of 2024 that I was let go.
Okay, so
Um,
you've been 2 years in recovery.
yep. I like that, yes. Beautiful recovery, and, at the same time so my family the picture behind me,
Yeah, yeah, cute.
we we ranched as well. I have a couple of kids going in my son, my youngest, is going into high school, my oldest is gonna be a senior. So, being able to take that time with them and reconnect with my family has been invaluable. And we kind of expanded our ranch, focused on that. Um, I still have maintained my nursing license. The state I'm in used to require that you had, a minimum number of hours worked
Yeah.
in relation to being able to renew your license. That law just got changed,
Oh, good.
and so it only requires CEUs.
Perfect.
Presently, I'm telling you, the stars continue to align in such a beautiful way.
Oh,
I was panicked when I knew that I lost my job. I was terrified to go back into the system. I thought, "I'm just gonna let my license go. I can't do this." It was heartbreaking to think that, and
oh,
then this year when it's up for renewal and the law got passed, oh, thank you. So I renewed it, and an opportunity has kind of come open to potentially become a school nurse
Mm.
and getting into the education system in a different aspect and, you know, being able to care for this community can, versus going outside of it. Cause again, I love this community.
Well,
It's
that's the thing. You got in trouble at a workplace, but you're not in trouble with the law or
right.
that's what it feels like.
Oh, it absolutely, how you said that, it was shameful. And I, for probably 6 months, did not go out. I didn't go to the grocery store. I sent my daughter to go to the grocery store. I was so scared of going out in public and those looks from people that knew. But the little bit that I started going out and the support I actually got was so healing. And
Good.
it wasn't shameful,
Yeah.
and knowing that then I was like, "Okay, I had planned on writing a book long before any of this happened,
Okay.
just because I love nursing and
Yeah.
maybe it would I didn't know what it would
Be.
entail, what
Mhm.
yeah, and then, of course, it took its own course. Um,
Yeah.
but knowing that I wasn't alone and that I had the community support behind me in this was partly why, and to help people find their own voice.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I love about your story is you're trying to take this experience and in a healthy relationship, you have the hard conversations, but you end up focusing on what's good about it, right?
Yeah.
And you find a pathway to healing and you move on. And we could talk for a very long time on similar stories I could share with you, but I won't keep you very much longer. But I will share this one story where I was in a leadership position and somebody decided they wanted their friend in that position. And so they did some things to kind of undercut me, go through the boss and get their friend in this position. So I was you know, registered nurse. This person was not in a leadership role. Yeah. So I was told that essentially this is what's happening. And they announced it before I had a chance to even like come up with, some sort of the way they handled it wasn't to what I asked after the fact is I said, what would have been really nice is if you would have introduced me into my new job as something I had decided for myself and not something that was imposed upon me. Because I no complaints came down the pike as far as my job performance,
Right.
right? This wasn't a job performance issue. This was, hey, my friend would do a better job in this job and or whatever. I want my friend to work with me, whatever the narrative was. I wasn't in those meetings. But I knew what happened. I got pushed out because somebody closer to the boss, pitched their friend's needs on top of mine. So when I had a moment with my boss, I said, why did you handle it this way? Like, why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you have a conversation with me? Which is the adult thing to do.
Yep.
He goes, well, you know, I just didn't know if you could handle it or if you would have accepted. And I go, well, you certainly didn't give me a chance, did you?
Right.
You know, like you didn't even, I go, maybe I wouldn't have, but I was not even given the chance to respond. You just assumed you knew how I was going to respond. So I kind of made him course correct on how they handled it. But I mean, how embarrassing, it was a total embarrassing way that they handled it. It made it look like I got demoted. It made it look like, and it was just this like friend working for a friend.
Yeah.
So I say that to share in the story with you that you're not alone and that
Yeah.
I've got stories, girl.
We
And
all do.
I
Oh, man.
know if you and I have stories,
Yeah,
but it's just a horrible way to be treated as a human being when
it
you go
is.
into a caring profession. So I just wanted to validate that for you.
Thank you.
But you do kind of talk about some points. I think there's 5 points, um, hindsight points that you would tell, like maybe your younger self, your younger nurse self. Um, one is first understand your value. Two is speak up, challenge the phrase, "This is the way we've always done it." Never stop learning, and find what fills your cup early and fill it often.
Yes.
Is there
We're the
anything you
only
want to
ones.
elaborate on those points? Kind
We
of
are the only ones that can truly fill our own cups, that you can't rely on your employer to do that for you. The compensation doesn't fill your cup. Find things that, whether it be a monthly massage, whether it be, you know, a hike, do something for yourself, because you cannot fill somebody else's cup from an empty one yourself. And, I can't remember who said it at one of the leadership things that I went to of, with employees, you have to make deposits into
Mhm,
their, so kind of that mentality, who's making deposits into your cup if they're going to, into your account if they're going to make a withdrawal kind of thing. So if I need to make deposits into somebody's account, I need to make sure that mine is able to cover those deposits.
mhm.
Uh, and speaking up to, our patients depend on it. They are at their most vulnerable. Know your resources, build a team around you. But so many people say, online that, more of the communities that I'm a part of, that your coworkers aren't your friends. But why can't we support each other? Why
Right.
can't we band together? Why can't we, if we see something wrong? That was what was so disheartening to me, that the things that I went through, and people would come back later or still coming back to me going, "I know that what they did to you was wrong, but
Yeah.
I just couldn't speak up. I was too afraid to."
Right.
But if I stand up and you stand up, that's two of us, are they willing? And you had asked earlier too about that surgeon. Were they afraid of losing him? Was it harder to recruit them? It's actually harder for them to recruit nurses here.
Mhm,
They're operating on more travel nurses, and the surgeons are coming in out of the woodworks right now for them.
mhm. Okay. Which
Um, yeah, and continue your education. I mean, it doesn't have to be just traditional things in, getting our certifications in, like I did for the OR, or whether it be chemo, your
yeah.
holistic side of things, educate yourself, and that fills our cups as well.
Yeah.
And knowledge
Well,
is wealth.
we put a lot into our education as nurses, and so it's really hard to think about starting over.
Oh,
So, thinking how we can use what we've got to work for us.
mhm.
And, I became a board certified holistic nurse and I became certified in cranial sacral therapy. And I started creating my own work environment so that I could manage myself, you know? And I think if we had some systemic changes, there's so many things I love about nursing, and there's so many ideas. Like the idea of the job is always so beautiful. And it's like, that's
It
exactly what
is.
I want to do. But it's the chipping away at the soul of the nurse through moral injury, and just, asking too much.
Mhm.
Sorry, just asking too much of us. And so the more we kind of all come together and hold these boundaries and demand nursing patient staffing ratios,
Yes.
and we start to create these unions and band together, and that's how change is done. That how change is made. But we've got to stand up and speak up. Like
Yes, we do.
we do. We just,
Yep.
it's scary. And I know that money's on the line, but it's never going to change. Um, And to that point, that's why I created the academy, and we're kind of in a transition stage of being in person to online. So this coming year, the next 6 months, we'll see more courses where you can get CNE credits for taking our courses. So
It's awesome.
um, I want everyone to know who's listening, if you're a nurse, we're trying to empower you by giving you these ongoing, continuing education courses so that if you want to work for yourself at some point, you can.
Yeah.
If that becomes it took me 10 years to make the transition. So
It's scary.
it
It's
is,
scary.
scary, and you have to, like, you can't just take the leap and hope it works out. For a lot of people, we have our reasons for where we're at. But if you're feeling that angst and you're feeling like, what am I, you can start today just taking classes,
Yep.
getting to know what's out there, looking for the next goalpost, to keep you going because it is rewarding and we became nurses for a reason. So,
Absolutely.
well, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story. Congratulations on being
Thank you.
this is brave. This is
It was
really brave.
scary, but
Yeah.
you know what? It was so healing, and I've told so many people, that I've talked to, journal, because that's kind of essentially what that was, and how healing that was to
Yeah.
just get that out.
Yeah. I mean, it is scientifically backed that writing out such things will help us heal.
Yeah.
Um, I wish you nothing but the best on your
Thank you.
continued healing journey. Hope that we can stay in contact. I thoroughly enjoyed your perspective and learning more about you. So,
Thank you, and likewise.
hey, if you guys want to learn more, we're gonna put all of the information for Larkin in our podcast, link in bio kind of stuff. But put it on our website and at holisticnurseacademy.org and on our Instagram page, we have a link tree where you can link to all the things that you want to follow us on. But we're here for you. We are creating community. Let's gather together, support one another, and let's make change happen. So, till next
Yes.
time. Just so you know, Larkin, I have my next guest. I have to do 2 podcasts this week, because I wanted to fit my next guest in before she had a big commitment.
Oh,
And her name is Dr. Lore, and she's all about it's not burnout, it's trauma.
yeah.
And I think you would love her content too.
Yes, I will be looking forward to that
So
one.
yeah, everyone stay tuned. I've got back-to-back powerhouses this week, and I feel so super blessed. So, okay, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.